Hey, everybody. Welcome to Act 3 on CHLY 101.7 FM. Always delighted that you joined the program. You guys know how much I loved my dogs. You know how much Bobby Wilson and Kevin were such an influential part of everything that I've done in my career, and certainly a big, big part of the things that I do every day. And after they passed away, I had the great privilege, actually, just before they passed, the first one passed away, I met Sharon Spivak from ElderDog. She's back in the booth with me. We got some cool stuff to talk about. But she has also prompted me to be a volunteer for ElderDog. So I am so delighted to see you, Sharon. Welcome to the program. How are you?
I am doing wonderfully. Thank you for having me.
I love having you back. I love having you back. I'm so glad you're here, and I'm so glad to truly, embrace being an ElderDog volunteer. Now, having said that, I haven't had an opportunity yet to foster a dog, but I know that that's coming. But there's so much we can tell people about the organization. So I think, if you don't mind, for those who haven't had the privilege of hearing of you before, can you tell everybody what ElderDog is and does?
Yeah, ElderDog's actually a national organization called ElderDog Canada, but it's got branches in 8 provinces, including, of course, here in British Columbia. And the Nanaimo branch, which covers the central Vancouver Island from about Parksville right through to Ladysmith, was formed in March of 2020. So just at the start of COVID.
Totally.
And so we're coming up now just after our sort of 2nd anniversary. And ElderDog provides services to seniors, that is people 55 years and older, who need help looking after their dogs. The goal of the program is quite simply to keep love in the home, to ensure that a senior is able to continue to live with their dog in a loving relationship, and we provide all of the supports that we can to make that happen. And so we do everything from walking the dog to picking up and delivering pet food, or taking the dog to vet appointments or to the groomer. If the senior owner has to go into hospital for a brief period of time, we provide temporary foster care in an approved home. And then in the event that it actually does come time to rehome the dog, we specialize in rehoming senior dogs.
Yeah. I know there's a big pause for the listeners here, because you can hear me gasp. When you and I had been early on introduced, I had 2 Jack Russells, Bobby Wilson and Kevin. Yeah. Bobby Wilson was the most extraordinary noise-making, fabulous little snoofaroodle doodle that there ever was. As a Jack Russell, she kept the rats at bay. In Nanaimo, of course, everyone has rats, so she kept them right at bay. And then, of course, there was my beautiful Kevin, who was also a little girl. They were sisters out of Oklahoma, a different mother, same dad. And I loved them so much for the 12 years that I had them in my life. And to this day, I'm still, it's been a year now. I just celebrated the anniversary of Kevin's passing, and I still feel it. I still feel them around me all of the time. I think that people who have pets, that love their pets, especially older adults, when their pet is no longer a part of their lives, it's such a void. And when I say that, I'm talking about not being a part of their lives through no choice of their own. The family has sometimes decided that mom or dad, shouldn't be looking after this pet any longer. And as a result of it, not only do older adults experience that loss, and then they often are moved into facility of some form, whether it's independent living or assisted living or in care, and they never get to have that closure, and they lose their dog. And so ElderDog, I love the fact that people get to have the love in their home for as long as they possibly can. Obviously, it inspired me to become an ElderDog volunteer, but what inspired you, Sharon? How did you decide to become involved with ElderDogs, and what has it meant to you?
Well, ElderDog combines 2 areas of sort of work and commitment that I have. And one is sort of sharing your love of dogs, which have been a part of my adult life. And we now have our 2nd dog, Abby. And as well, a lot of my volunteer work has been with seniors. My other volunteer commitment is with the BC Alzheimer's Society. And so this was just a wonderful combination to be able to work both with seniors and with dogs. And it seemed like such a simple concept to me, and yet one that had such a profound impact.
Such a profound impact.
Seniors' lives, often, volunteer projects are quite complicated and highly structured and, have so many moving pieces. And this is just something as simple as, well, you can't walk the dog anymore because you had knee replacement surgery or your arthritis has progressed to the point where you can no longer do that. Why give up your dog? Why not just have someone come into the home and take the dog for a walk? And so a lot of what we do is very simple in the task performed, but enormously meaningful and complex in the sense that it maintains this very special relationship that's there. And for me, it's just meant just being able, as that slogan goes, to keep love in the home means everything to me. When I hear seniors say to us, I wouldn't have had these years, but for your services, there's no question in my mind that my dog would have been placed with another family or would have been euthanized because there was no way I could continue to provide it with the things that the dog needed, but for your assistance. You can't get any better reward than that.
No, absolutely. I recently had an experience. It wasn't part of the ElderDog family. It came through me in a slight, but surely by accident. A lot of my listeners know that I have my mother-in-law who lives next door to where I am, and she had a great big Black Labrador. Since you and I have spoken, we had to put Bear down. Bear had severe cancer in his hinds, and so it was so painful for the dog. Mom basically made the decision very, very quickly that she couldn't bear to have, pardon the pun, couldn't bear to have Bear suffer. Yes. And so what ended up happening was I had a fantastic vet who'd looked after a dog that I had many years ago and supported me in the same way. And so I called him and I asked, could he come over and take a look and see, give us the best possible outcome for this. Mom is 87. She has fairly severe arthritis in her right leg. And so, she could never take Bear on the leash anyway. So, Bear was one of those dogs that had the luxury of the neighborhood to sort of support her. At any rate, when the dog passed away, Mom was like, I could see that she didn't want to have another dog in the house yet. It was too early, much like me with my girls. It's too early for me. I wasn't able to do that just yet. And so, everything was fine. And then I started to really notice Sharon, her begin to deteriorate a little bit, not in a big way, but she wasn't going outside as much anymore, and she wasn't getting up off her chair as much anymore. She wasn't catering to anyone, for lack of better words, anymore, and having that reason to. I mean, her son lives in the house and all of that stuff, an adult son, but it's different. Yeah. So I was on the other side of the map, actually, on a conference when I got a phone call from a vet that I just happen to know well. And so the vet called me and said, I've got a problem. Can you maybe hook me up with somebody? Because can you hook me up? And I said, sure, this is the phone number, call ElderDog. Let's get this thing in process and everything will be fine. She says, I don't think we have time for that. I said, what do you mean? She said, well, I have a lady here who's about to euthanize her 14-year-old dog, who is perfectly healthy. And she's coming on Friday to have the procedure done. And the woman had called me Tuesday. And I said, well, I'm nowhere near, there's nothing, I don't know what to do here, right? And so I did put a call in to say, hey, team, what's going on? But meanwhile, I happened to phone my mom and I said, Mom, this dog is about to be put down on Friday. And she's like, well, that's not going to happen. So meanwhile, the owner of the dog, by the way, it wasn't that the owner wanted to put the dog down. The owner Her husband had just died. Her
Yeah.
son had just died by suicide weeks afterwards. Her other son had just been diagnosed by a terminal illness, and she no longer was in a position to care for herself, let alone the dog. She needed support and she needed help. And so she was going to move out of province in order to make this happen. So the vet said, could you please call the woman and see if you can handle this? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not bringing this up for any other reason except for the idea that love happens when nobody's looking, when things are going on, quiet little ways for people to help find support are there. So suddenly now I come home on the Thursday, the dog is destined to be put down on Friday. I come home from the ferry, I go pick up the dog. Mom meets the dog Thursday night, and now that dog's absolutely spoiled, rotten, the way she was before with her own mom and family before everything bad happened. She's exercising again. My mother is taking the dog up and down the road. The dog is an elder dog herself, so she's slow moving, mom's slow moving. And I've watched the purpose, and the reason I bring this up, this long verbose story, is because at the end of the day, Sharon, because of that one ability for two people who are going through crisis to be able to have an outside universe, whatever that looks like, supportive community, come together, save the dog, save the woman, and save my mother-in-law.
Yeah. No, and that story perfectly encapsulates that, when there's a supportive community there around senior dogs and senior owners, and saying this is a lifetime commitment. And so one of the things that ElderDog does for someone is dogs that we walk, when it does come to the point in time, if it gets there, where it is no longer feasible for the dog to remain with the senior, but the dog still has many happy years left. It's not a quality of life issue for the dog. We can transition that dog and continue to work with the senior to make sure that the dog is placed in just a wonderful second home and gets a second lease on life. And that's a huge burden off of, the owner, off the dog. And it's a wonderful thing for the new owner who, if they go to their shelter or what have you, is often left with a choice that's really not suitable for their age or lifestyle.
And I think it's hard as well, when people want to get a pet, they often think about getting a puppy or a yearling, or, one that's very young, that is still got many, many years in front of them. But many breeds are dogs that actually can live a very, very long time into their teen years and late, almost 20 years old for some breeds, provided that they're given simply the exercise and the love that they need in order to be in a nurturing home. And seniors are the best for nurturing. They love having their pets around them. And it just takes a little bit of help. Maybe it takes somebody to go and grab a bag of food and, bring that upstairs, or take the dog to have the nails clipped or what have you. It's such an inspiring way for people to share the community and share the dog's life, because dogs they're so unconditional. They just want to love you. That's all they want to do. Yeah.
Sure. And it's all part of, we talk a lot about aging in place. We talk a lot about, senior friendly communities. And this whole concept fits directly into those notions of just providing the supports to enable seniors to remain active, vital parts of the community with their companion animal.
Yeah. And I also love the idea that for the way that ElderDog does things, I appreciate it. I'll just, get you to talk about how the volunteers are vetted, because, we're not just placing, unknown people into a home. We really do make sure that the people are properly vetted. How'd you like to talk a little about that?
Yeah, so anyone who wants to become a volunteer with ElderDog has to fill out a detailed application form that's initially vetted through the national office. And every volunteer has a criminal records check because they are dealing with a vulnerable population.
Mhm.
And once you successfully pass that process, you're issued an ID badge with your photo ID so that the senior is secure in knowing that the person who's entering
Mhm.
their home is in fact, a screened member of ElderDog and is wearing a photographic ID tag. And then through the course of volunteering, there's initial guidelines and other documents, booklets that are issued to volunteers that provide some preliminary training and talk about the
Mhm.
do's and don'ts of walking the dog. And we have a volunteer newsletter that comes out, as well as reminders, throughout the year about things. We just passed through a heat wave, and so we
Absolutely.
send in volunteers specific instructions of just what to be alert to when you're walking dogs in very, very hot weather,
Absolutely.
to make sure that that's safe and that's comfortable. So the volunteers who walk the dog certainly go through a vetting process, and they're also placed into teams. And
Mhm.
so, one often hears with seniors where they have in-home support services provided through Island Health or whatever,
Mhm.
that every 2 weeks it's a different person showing up, and you have to
Yeah,
give them the same instructions again and develop the same trust relationship. And then just when you begin to feel comfortable with Sarah, Sarah's out the door and suddenly Mary's there and she's the one
totally.
who's providing.
Yeah.
So we set up walking teams. And so depending on how many days a week the senior requires services, whether it's walking or what have you, there's a number of volunteers who will provide that on a weekly basis. And that forms the care team for that dog. And unless a volunteer has to change out of the organization, that
Mhm.
care team stays in place, and they can
Mhm.
communicate with each other and share whatever issues come up and little tips and techniques for, I walked, Bear yesterday and I noticed he does this around smaller dogs. So I tried this and it seemed to work. And you have these discussions that take place,
Yeah.
but it also means that the senior knows there's this sort of group of people who will show up on their doorstep, and they develop a relationship of trust. And we don't see a huge turnover in
No,
our teams.
no. The good news about elder dog too is that, for example, in my own case, I'm not able to walk the dogs. I work full time, and then of course produce a variety of other things within community. So my favorite part about it is that I can volunteer as needed. So on an as needed basis, what I like to do is foster. If I know that somebody's going in for the hospital, or I'm happy to take the dog for a few days. If it's a longer term foster, of course, I'm happy to do that as well. And what I find really interesting, and what was lovely about the process from a interview for a foster perspective, is that one of the senior team leads came to my home and really checked it out to make sure that it was a safe place for any dog to come and stay, whether it be for a few hours or for several days or months at a time. And so I think that for seniors who might be listening to this, it's very important to recognize that even if your dog is being cared for by an elder dog volunteer in their home, as opposed to going to your home to walk the dog, that vetting process continues, that the people that are part of the organization take great measures to ensure the safety, not only for the owners of the dog, but also for the dogs themselves, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And this service is free. This is the thing that I think is so fantastic. There's as a volunteer opportunity, older adults don't need to dig further into their pension check in order to support this service, right?
That's correct. It's all performed by volunteers. There's no fee for the service. It's provided solely for the benefit of the volunteer, for the benefit of the senior
Of course.
and the dog. Yeah.
But there are some hard costs that go with it, which is one of the reasons why we're connecting again. I'm so happy to see you. I'm so glad you're here. You know, in a few minutes, I'm going to ask people to go grab a piece of paper and a pen, because that's, you know, the way that we do things around here, to make sure you've got stuff ready for you, so that, Sharon, you'll be able to tell people how they can get in touch with ElderDog. But can you tell us a little bit about the upcoming fundraiser and what that money is going to go for?
Yeah, so as I said at the start, ElderDog is a national organization, and so we receive wonderful support financially as well as just logistically from the national office. So all of the forms that have to be filled out are all produced at the national level in our ID tags and that sort of thing. And in the event that a dog who's in our care, who's been signed over to us in a permanent foster situation, requires emergency veterinary treatment, that's also absorbed by the national office. But our local expenses, we have to cover ourselves as an individual branch. And those expenses range from everything from the cost of advertising our own events, developing posters or brochures or what have you, to the needs of the dogs. I mean, from time to time, we'll go and establish a relationship with the senior who hasn't been walking their dog for a while, has been relying, say, on the backyard or that sort of thing, and they really don't have a properly fitting collar or a properly fitting harness, and they're reluctant to make these expenditures. And we like to have a reserve of funds where we can just step in and say, don't worry about it. You know, the whole family is new to sort of the whole walking regime. We'll take care of this aspect of it. We'll get the dog properly outfitted so it can be safely walked in the neighborhood and it's comfortable and that sort of thing. And so we do have those sort of dog care expenses or dog treats that are used on the walk, because we want to start reinforcing, you know, proper social behavior on the part of the dog when it's out walking. And again, its owner hasn't had to really reflect on this and may not have little treats. And it's kind of fun for the volunteers to be able to go out shopping and kind of select what they like. So we'll provide some funds for that. And it just helps everyone sort of bond. So there are all kinds of individual expenses that come down to our level. And of course, with COVID, it's been a challenge, as all organizations know. Trying to do fundraising when you can't have an information table in a public area, when groups that you would normally appeal to, like church groups or Rotary clubs or Probus, are not having in-person meetings for so long. So one of the things that we did last year and was a huge success, was great fun for everybody, and so we're going at it again in September, is we had an online auction where we had a number of items that were donated, and we set up a special link through our Facebook page, and people have a whole week to bid on these items, and they're photographed and they're fully described. And it was just a great fundraiser for us. And so we're doing it again.
What a wonderful idea. Really, what a wonderful idea. I have to tell you, I snuck onto the webpage to have a peek to sort of see if I could get a preview, and I couldn't. It wouldn't open for me. I thought, darn it, at least I would like to know. I'm glad
you said so.
You know, it's like, how come I can't get through there? But I think that's great, to be honest with you. So it opens at the same time. When does the auction open? How do people get involved?
So the auction is run from September 10th until the 17th. So they've got a week to do so. And while there is a horrendous link to it with all kinds of numbers and so on, the easiest way is just to Google ElderDog Nanaimo auction. And it will take you to our Facebook page, but a specific sort of section of it that is reserved for this function. And as of, I think it's 9 a.m. on September 10th, the items will appear. And as I said, they'll have photographs and description of, you know, all the important details. And then it'll set a minimum bid. And then we just go from there. And the only condition is that if you are the winner, you need to be able to come and pick the item up in Nanaimo, or you're willing to have it shipped to you.
So I'm going to actually just repeat a little bit of that because your microphone unfortunately was going a little bit in and out. For listeners, if you just tuned in, you've tuned into Act 3 on CHLY 101.7 FM. Always delighted that you're here. Thank you so much for being here on the program today. I have Sharon Spivak from ElderDog Canada. We've been talking about the ElderDog organization, as well as talking about how people can participate in the online auction that's coming up oh so very, very soon. So this is good news, but you basically, could you repeat just that last little bit of people getting the, like how they can go online, and we'll just make sure that your sound as best as possible. We'll look up for that. You know, it's the joy of the Zoom interview. My apologies, folks. Thanks so much. Go ahead, Sharon.
So again, at 9 a.m. September 10th, it all opens up to the public. You just go on Google and enter a search for ElderDog Nanaimo auction. And it will give you the link to our page that's part of our Facebook page. And you'll see all of the items. Photographs will be there and descriptions of the items and a minimum bid. And you can start the bidding process. And the only condition that I want to make clear up front is that if you happen to be the winner, A, congratulations, and B, you need to pick the item up in Nanaimo or else pay for the shipping of the item to you. And there'll be a location, it'll be posted on the page in Nanaimo that will be open. It's actually a dog food business that's assisting us in this. And you'll be able to go to this place throughout the day.
So I'm curious, how has the community responded? Because I know, well, first I've got several questions in regards to ElderDog and COVID, but we'll go there in a minute. Before we do that, back, you know, to remain with the auction piece of it, has the community stepped up in a lot of ways? Like, or where are the items coming from? Are they individuals that have put stuff up for auction? Like, what kind of things can people find?
We've had really tremendous support to the point where we actually decided we had enough items. And we needed to just tell people, thank you, save it for next year, we'll get back to you, kind of thing. And the source of the items is both individuals and businesses. And so we have gift cards from restaurants, from a shopping mall, from food and dog related. We also have individual artists. So we have a wood turner, we have painting, we have photography. Of course, lots of the pet community has come forward, and so there'll be lots of items to do with pets and dogs that will also be available for auction. And we have household goods, wonderful decorative items, and some more practical items for use in the kitchen and the home. And the contributions have either been individual or businesses, so we've had broad-based support that way.
So wonderful. Did you buy anything last year off the auction?
I bought 3 things. I have to tell you truthfully, one of them I wasn't really crazy about, but I thought this should go for more. So I tried to put in a competitive bid to get and I ended up being And the entire executive has never let me forget that. They keep saying, when are you going to bring that out? That wonderful that you bid on. But no, I did. I got myself a lovely purse and I got myself earrings.
Oh, good for you. Well, that's wonderful. I think everybody should check it out September the 10th at 9 o'clock. It's going to open up. I think that's going to be just brilliant. We'll talk a little bit more about that again in a few minutes. But since, you know, we were talking a little about how we've had to change in the way of fundraising, right? We've had to change things due to COVID. And I appreciate that. But I'm really curious, how did seniors manage as far as volunteers and ElderDog? Did you see a real rise of requests for service? You know, how did COVID go now, especially now that in comparison to us being back now, not out of COVID, but kind of in a different place than we were 2 years ago and an inception? How have things been for ElderDog overall?
Well, I think at the start, COVID was a bit of a double-edged sword for us because in a way, our services were needed more than ever because seniors were reluctant to leave their homes,
Sure.
even for something as relatively safe as an outdoor walk with their dog. But it still was something that they weren't all that comfortable in doing. There was that sense of
Yeah.
hunkering down. And so that would make our services, of course, even more appealing at that time. But then the flip side was you were letting people into your home in order to do the initial assessment, in order to meet the dog and pick up the dog and so on. So I'm not sure in the end which won out more, but I can say that the requests for services have certainly increased as the restrictions have lifted. And again, I can't tell you the extent to which that simply we're becoming more known and more word of mouth.
Yes.
Versus people who might have used our services 2 years ago, but for COVID are now feeling more comfortable, with that.
Yeah, for sure. There, unfortunately, sometimes as well, precarious housing for older dogs can be a challenge. I know that there are some older dogs that need a little extra special care, and ElderDog doesn't turn them away either. I was worried about a couple of them. I know that there were a couple of pugs that were in need. One of them had a mobility device in order to function. The other, I don't believe had that, but was still going through. They were a family of dogs, and that, you know, there were some concerns over, you know, this dog being lost in the wayward because they did require that additional help. But ElderDog stepped right up, didn't they?
Yeah, certainly as time has gone on, we've come to appreciate that for every, say, 10 calls that we get for service, one of those calls is really quite extraordinary. There's always
Yes.
some particular need attached to it, and sometimes it's associated with the dog itself having
Yep.
particular special care needs that we need to adapt to and find volunteers who are willing to take on that extra challenge and training that might be required. And sometimes it's the seniors themselves, where we've had to become almost part of the household because the seniors' mobility or mental capacity is such that they're really borderline in terms of being able to take care of their dog. And, ElderDog prides itself on providing non-judgmental support until such time as the quality of life isn't there. And then we sit down and we have an honest conversation, with the owner and sometimes the owner's family, and saying, well, let's brainstorm a bit. What can we do to make this work better? Or is it now time to have that conversation, so to speak? But in the interim, we've addressed many challenging situations, and I have to say, I'm constantly blown away by how our volunteers step up to the plate.
Yeah.
We've had volunteers who have gone twice daily, 3 times daily to a senior's home to administer medication or to grind up food because the dog just had dental surgery or whatever is required. We've had another volunteer whose owner was in a day procedure when the dog unfortunately became very, very ill and ended up spending 4 hours at the emergency veterinary clinic with the dog on behalf of the owner. The list goes on. Our volunteers are just phenomenal people.
I'm not an active volunteer in the same way most of our volunteers are. I do it as as I mentioned earlier, that my mode of availability. Having said that, I get all the emails that go through. And some of the things that I love is that there'll be an emergent situation that comes up, right? So an email, let's say out of example, I get an email that says maybe 10 in the morning, for example. And it says to, all ElderDog volunteers, we have an urgent situation, bang, bang, bang. Do you know what? Usually within a half an hour, 40 minutes, an hour, you don't almost as a volunteer really even get a chance to open the email and the volunteers have come to the table to say, I can do it, I got it, I got it. I just find that to be extraordinary. And I think partially it's because many of the volunteers love dogs or have had dogs themselves, or want dogs, but maybe don't have the living situation which would allow for a pet to live in-house.
Yes.
So there's any number of ways where this program works and is strong for not only volunteers, but also for the participants. When it comes to participants, how do older adults, you know, how do they find ElderDog? How do they connect? How can we teach people to reach out to ElderDog?
Yeah, in terms of seniors who already know we exist and want the service, they simply go to the national website and they can fill out an application form there, or they can simply call the number and one of our volunteers will connect with them and sort of walk them through the process. And just like you said, when you were volunteering to foster, how someone came to your home to check out the circumstances, all of the volunteer intake we do is an in-person assessment of both the senior, their home, and the dog. So we don't take, so to speak, the senior at their word over the telephone around what's required, because often in the one-to-one and just looking at the dog and looking at the living situation, we're able to work out a much better care plan that addresses all of the needs rather than what might initially be identified by the senior owner as what's required that way. But more generally, in terms of how they hear about us, it's a lot of it now is word of mouth. Yeah. And beyond that, it's we reach out in any way we can. I've given in-person presentations. We have posters up in the community. We are listed with, you know, seniors outreach, with handy dart service, with medical alert, every organization we can think of just to get the word out in the community that we exist, and that if you think you might require our help, just reach out.
Yeah, any idea about how many families we're working with at this point? Or that's kind of a pie in the sky sort of an idea, but you know, I'm curious how many people that we might be supporting at this time in community.
Right now for dog walking, which is usually at least 4 to 5 days a week services, we have 36 clients.
Yeah, so that's a lot.
And that's sort of these are clients who we're providing daily services to. On top of that, on an as needed basis, we've done many temporary fosters. We've done a number of permanent rehomings in the community. And that is, you know, on an as needed basis. So we could have a quiet month and then the following month we could have 3 requests for service. And so most recently, for example, the request, you were talking about the difficulty of housing dogs and seniors and what have you, was a temporary fostering request for someone who had relocated to the community and was simply finding it impossible to find rental accommodation that would permit her to have her pet. And so she was living in a hotel, and it was a terrible situation for her. And what she really needed was just to be able to place the dog somewhere so she could look in the community and just get her bearings and try and arrange you know, her new life in the community so it would encompass her dog. So there was a temporary foster situation that didn't even arise as a result of any kind of medical issue. It was really just, again, a sort of societal issue around housing and seniors and pets.
You know, we're seeing a lot more in our community of that very situation. Housing is difficult to find at best, and it's particularly challenging. I actually was just at Unity this morning for those of you who are just tuning in. I'm actually taping this the day before air. Actually, in this case, it's a week before air, but don't tell anybody. Anyway, so just as it goes. And what I have just learned is that there have been some recent openings for people that have independent living that are older, where they can take their pet. However,
Hmm.
it has to be of a certain size. So if
Right.
you have a
Mhm.
certain size or a certain weight over that amount, then again, you wouldn't be able to bring your dog with you. I was delighted to hear at least that there were some opportunities, because for many people, if you were having to leave your home for any reason, you would not be able to take your dog with you. So it's nice to see that our society is becoming a bit more age friendly in this regard. But you know, what happens to these dogs, you know, for without, you know, if it wasn't for ElderDog, so many end up at the SPCA. You know, I've been hearing and seeing a lot on Facebook about dogs being left, you know, in the middle of nowhere, people driving away and not caring for the dog any longer. And it kills my spirit to believe that people will take that route instead of reaching out.
Mhm.
You know, I mean,
Yeah, it certainly, and with the post-pandemic pet boom and what we all feared would happen when people return to work, is taking place, so that shelters and a lot of the alternatives that we used to rely on, their resources are stretched to the limits. They're at an overcapacity. And of course, in terms of, for lack of a better way or a harsh way of putting it, the marketability of an animal decreases as the animal ages. And so if
absolutely.
if you walk into a shelter and you've got Fluffy, who's 3 years old, no health issues and has many happy years left, and then you have Fluffy, who's 10 years old, who needs dental work, has a skin allergy and can only be fed a certain kind of food that is more expensive,
Yeah,
you're going to
yeah,
choose Fluffy number one and not door number two. And so
yeah.
having an organization that specializes in placement of senior pets, I think is really critical at all times, and particularly now when resources are so stretched to the limit in the animal care community generally.
I'm glad that you brought that up, because I do understand that there has been such an increase over the COVID pet, and I wondered from an elder dog perspective, how has that been looking for the team?
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah, I think
it's
mainly it's impacting, we certainly don't see the dogs that we're taking care of were not purchased as a
no, of
response
course
to
not. Yeah,
COVID. These are longstanding relationships. So fortunately, we're not seeing it impact us in that sense, but we certainly are in that the resources of sister organizations who we would come to rely upon. And so we've had a handful of foster placements that were referrals from our local SPCA who were at capacity,
yeah,
and just knew that we would do fostering and would connect with us and say, are you in a position to help us out? We know this doesn't fit exactly within,
yes,
your mandate, but if you have someone, and of course, we work so well, they do so much for us that, we're happy to help out if we can, but we know the pressure that they're under, and it impacts everyone. And of course, vets, try and get a vet appointment, in the near future is impossible. Wait times now to see a vet are very long. And so
yeah,
that impacts our services if we do take an animal into care, who perhaps the senior has not noticed that they have an ear infection or something that really requires,
professional attention. Yeah.
professional attention. Exactly. It's impacting us in that sense as well.
So some of the money that gets raised for the auction will be used to look after some of those local needs, will it?
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
is correct. Yeah.
Which I think is really important. I know from a perspective of the vets that are available, I know how wonderful the vets are in Nanaimo. All of them are really
Yes.
kind, loving humans. But I have noticed, I know, especially when Kevin was very sick, I was taking her in several times to make, to sort of souse out
Mhm.
what the problem was, what was going on. And there were always several, because people weren't going inside of the clinic. right? With COVID, everybody was outside in their car, right? Everyone was sort of leaning off, and the team would come out in their full masks and everything, and try to
Yeah.
look after. I could only imagine what a difficult challenge it was for so many of the workers. We thank all the healthcare workers. I think we also need to thank all the vets and the nurse assistants that are helping those vets to take care of the dogs during these pandemics and terrible situations as well. It's never just the human. There's so much more to it than that. And speaking of that, it's dogs that we take care of. And I say we because I'm a proud elder dog volunteer. But I'm curious, it is just dogs that we do, though. We don't really foster cats or anything like that. That doesn't come up so much. So is there a sister organization, just out of curiosity, Sharon, that you're aware of for animals other than dogs? Do you know of any, or would that also fall under the mandate of SPCA?
I'm not aware of any that focus on cats. That's in part because the care of cats is so much simpler. I mean, the main challenge for seniors would be if they lose their driver's license and they need help accessing either veterinary or services, or they need help in terms of food delivery.
Sure.
But those are things that can readily be arranged either through neighbors, or food delivery is offered in some cases. So really, it's because dogs have needs that are so specific to the breed that ElderDog was formed. And I'm not aware of, I may be wrong, but I'm certainly not aware of a similar organization that provides services for cats.
Yeah, I'm not either, but I'm happy to know that, that the SPCA does support all animals. But hopefully, again, the needs are so much different for dogs. There's a social element to dogs that's really a necessary part of their livelihood and their experience on Earth as well. Got to ask you, because you've been with ElderDog almost since the beginning, right? Were you one of the founding volunteers, I think, hey?
Yes, I was.
And I just have to ask you, I'm sorry to be voyeuristic in your life for a moment, but has there been a particular pet that you have had the glory of volunteering with the family for, that's been a favorite outside of your own dogs? Like, have you found that there's been, a dog or two or three or five that,
When you're getting up to 5, I don't think you can use the word favorite anymore.
True.
I'm not sure at what point, Kathy, there's the cutoff. And
I know,
well, it's
Sharon,
interesting you should say that, because we just, I was part of the dog care team for a little Havanese dog since day one, one of our very first clients. And he's just a sweetie, and he was a part of my life every week for the last 2 years. But his owner just very recently she has a degenerative condition that had progressed to the point where she felt even just the basic, her ability to be mobile within her home, her ability to open food, that kind of thing, had just become sufficiently compromised that she thought, no, it really is time. And so after agonizing over the decision, a friend of hers who knew the dog agreed to provide it with a home. And I'm thrilled to say that the dog is doing wonderfully. But our whole care team took the owner out for lunch after the placement, and just kind of stayed in regular. And I'm still getting photographs and reports from the original owner telling me how the dog is doing in the new home. But it was very tearful for all of us. I mean, we sat around, we went out to Black Bear Pub and sat with the owner, and there wasn't a dry eye around the table.
No, of course not.
All of us just miss him tremendously, and are doing what we can to support the owner. And she just looked at us and said, I had 2 years with him that I would not have had but for you girls. She refers to us as the girls.
Yes, how lovely,
He
hey?
says, I miss the dog, but I also miss you girls.
Oh,
So yeah, it's
they,
just been a phenomenal relationship and a wonderful outcome, really. I mean, it's, we supported her in her decision to find him a new home, and he's doing very well. And it's just the rest of us that are left blithering idiots.
but I want to compound on that. I have the luxury in the daytime of working with older adults as part of my career, and I'm blessed every day to meet such extraordinary people. But one of the things that we take for granted is that there is that social element that goes along with having a volunteer come to your home to perform a service, whatever that service is. And when that is no longer necessary, not only do the volunteers miss the companionship of the older adult, but the older adult not only misses the dog, but also the people that were influential
Absolutely.
in their lives. And I think that it's such an important element to this whole process. You're not just coming to take the dog for a walk. That you've got eyes on the adult, the family member, mom, dad. You've got eyes on the dog and the health and well-being of the dog. You've got eyes on the community and the safety of the community and what's going on. So it becomes such a wraparound service through ElderDog to sort of contextually look and not only give that dog a new life, but give that older adult that companionship as well, just to talk about their beloved pet.
Yes. Yeah. No,
Yeah,
it's a connection that and a bond that really does extend into every aspect of their lives, because you are, it's a privilege. They're letting
it
you
is.
into their home. They're letting you into their life. They're often sharing, medical issues or emotional issues that they may not even be sharing with family, but they
Yeah,
trust you and they know that you need to know about it so
it's
that
true.
you can provide care and services. And that's an honor, and that's a privilege. And when you have that kind of relationship, it becomes much more meaningful than just that's the dog walker.
Yeah, it's never just the dog walker. You're right. It never, never, never. I think that one of the things that I really know is going back to the, at the top of the hour, I was talking about my mom in love and talking about, the changes that I've witnessed in her. The two dogs are so remarkably different, right? Bear was gregarious lab, big and bold and, full of life. And, mom had that dog in, that dog paid attention, right? Bear knew who mom was, and she's this tiny little woman. So, it was quite fun to watch this giant lab against this woman with such a small frame in comparison. And now that she has taken on Emma is not even remotely close to Bear in personality. She sleeps a lot. She is beautiful and she lays flat and she's the queen. She's taken over the household, even to the point, where Bear could never get away with stuff. This little Emma has, sunk into the hearts of the people in my next door home, right? Dogs have a way of really reaching in and providing us purpose in ways that no other animal, I think, can do the same way. It's just a different experience. But I love the health benefits that I've seen from my mom's change and having this little dog around her again. I wish that there was legislation that could help support that further. And I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot here. If you don't have an answer, don't worry. I don't expect you to, but I'm curious, has ElderDog Canada actually been advocating for more resources available for older adults to keep their pets at home as part of their care plan?
Yeah, certainly, ElderDog National's mission and the activities that they engage in are so much more broad-based than the provision of services, which is the focal point of all the branches. ElderDog National has spearheaded research and studies into, just how essential the bond is between humans, particularly seniors and animals, and has promoted its research in support of programs and services that could be offered, and really has just driven home the importance of that relationship that we can all see on a personal level. When,
Absolutely.
you know, Kathy, you speak of, you know, how the changes you see in your mother, you know, in love with the presence of, you know, Bear and now Emma. And we see that all the time. But somehow that awareness hasn't seemed to filter up to a level where it's become national recognition that this is an essential bond that needs to be supported through legislation around housing, through legislation in so many different areas that could exist. And certainly national office is spearheading those kind of efforts.
And I'm glad that they are. I was pleased, however, over COVID to know that most pet food stores, SPCA, they were considered to be essential services, and therefore they did not close. And I was very grateful for that. Although supplies certainly have been limited in some areas of Canada for sure. I think we're not too bad here on the West Coast, but I know in Alberta there has been some challenges. In other areas in the interior, there were some delivery issues with getting pet food, you know, aside of you know, grocery store pet food, but even that pet food it was hard to find pet food, period, for a while.
Well, I certainly know that my little Abby, you know, in the wake of the recent BCGEU strike, is very upset that she can only get 4 particular kinds of alcohol at the store. I've tried to explain to her, you know, that, but
how true is that, right? That's where the COVID-15 came from. It was the 15 ounce at the end of the long day. Wow, that's hilarious. I did see, for those of you who are watching this on YouTube, we're glad that you've tuned in. I don't know if you've been enjoying the program as much as I've been enjoying talking to Sharon, but for the radio listeners, there's a tail that just kind of goes behind the chair every few moments or so. So I have the luxury of talking over Zoom. I can see Sharon's beautiful face, and then there's just this little black tail. So which dog is that that's going back and forth behind you, looking for wine o'clock?
That's right. You're saying, is this going to run into happy hour?
The good news is the show is almost done for the moment. So listen here, I've got 2 things to have as due. Number 1, let's remind people how they can participate in the auction and how they can get in touch with ElderDog. And then we'll talk about your takeaway at the end of the program. So let's start with the first and foremost, how do people get involved? What can people do to become either a volunteer for ElderDog or become a recipient of the services?
Right. So for information about the organization, including how to access our services or to volunteer, just go to the national website, which is www.elderdog.ca, all lowercase, or just Google ElderDog Canada and it will take you right there. At the local level, we have a Facebook page. So the easiest way to find us is just ElderDog Nanaimo, and you'll find all kinds of photographs and postings there. And if you do ElderDog Nanaimo auction, it will take you directly to the page where we'll be launching our auction at 9 a.m. on September 10th. It runs 1 week, and please check it out. Lots of wonderful items for you to bid on.
Fantastic. Well, I'll definitely be checking it out because, you know, I love to shop, and why not shop for ElderDog? I'll take it any day of the week. So my favorite part of the program, you may recall, is the life lesson. If you could give you know, a thought to people as it relates to ElderDog and your experiences as a volunteer, or whatever that looks like, what would you like to imbibe to our community so they get a good understanding?
I think just, you know, if you live next door to, or in the neighborhood of, or even in your daily you know, community activities, if you see a senior who requires any form of assistance whatsoever, and that might be just giving them a little more time to do whatever it is they're trying to do, or it might be something more direct and active, just reach out and do that and help us all ensure that Nanaimo is an age-friendly community.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being on the program today, Sharon. It is now officially time to relax and enjoy the remainder of your day. I am delighted that our listeners have tuned in to Act 3 on CHLY 101.7 FM. Thank you so much, Sharon and ElderDog, for all the fantastic work that is done right here in beautiful downtown Nanaimo. Speaking of wonderful things that are happening, I'm delighted to remind you that Shine 2022 will be at the Vancouver Island Convention Center on September the 17th. There may be a ticket or two left. It's definitely worth finding out whether or not you can get your tickets at togetherweshine.ca. And if you have tuned in to Act 3 on Shaw Cable 4, we hope you enjoy the program. There's lots of terrific guests, and it's always great to bring great people to you. So thanks again for tuning into our program. In the meanwhile, I do hope you have a fantastic day. And don't forget, reach out to ElderDog. They can probably help someone that you love in our community. Bye for now.